had one pipe rupture. It was out in a garage on Christmas Eve, of course, last year.
How do you handle that? I bet you drove out there.
I did.
You 100% did.
I did. It was one of my 3 houses at the time. Christmas Eve.
Christmas
Eve.
Eve.
Why'd you call me out like that?
It's unfiltered. We gotta get right to it.
It is unfiltered. I did. Mike Simmons with Christmas Eve, property management, first year, getting water in the face in a garage.
Oh, is this thing on?
All right, so we're gonna roll right into this.
I thought we already had.
Yep, we have. So, so you were in the military.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Man, it's a long story, but I grew up out east of Indianapolis in Hancock County. Joined the Navy right out of high school. I was what's called undesignated, so I didn't have a job on a submarine, like no special training.
They just put you on a submarine?
Well, yeah.
That sounds intimidating to
okay,
me.
And don't edit this out. I failed out of nuclear power school because I was a mess in high school. Horrible GPA, just all kinds of trouble. Not a good example. But yeah, so I failed out of that, and then was already submarine volunteered. So ended up on a sub, and it was a great crew, great team. Loved it. Had some wonderful leaders in my life, and I applied for an officer program and got accepted to that. So
How far in when you applied? Was it like a year, 2 years?
I probably started applying at the 2.5-year mark, so left for that with a little over 3 years. They put me through a college prep school. It was nice in the military to have that kind of a transition school for good sailors with, maybe sketchy backgrounds or not so good, high school backgrounds. But it really prepped me. Then I went out and got a degree in physics, almost doubled my high school GPA. And while I was in college, and
so you went from struggling in high school to physics.
Yeah, well, and I think, like I said, I always took AP classes because I was kind of bored, and they were more interesting. But I just wouldn't do the homework, man. I don't know. I was a mess. Not a good example. But I think the military was invaluable in that, and like I said, there's a lot of leaders in my life that kind of showed me how to manage myself, how to make decisions and whatnot. And then that just continued on. So out of college, I got picked up for the explosive ordnance disposal community. So went from there to dive school, then out to a ship for 2 years out in Japan, where my son was born. Back to EOD school for 10 months. Learned how to be a bomb tech, a basic bomb tech, which was interesting. I traveled around a lot, worked with a lot of different companies. My job was just really to get out there and keep an eye on emerging tech and brief the team back in Washington, D.C. on that. After that, I left. I was the XO of Mobile Unit 1. That's a EOD command out on the West Coast. So I was the number 2 in command there, deployed with them, loved every minute of it, loved taking care of people. Had some amazingly talented men and women working for me. And then out of that, did a staff job, retired, and came back to Indiana.
Yeah, so you're back in Indiana, and the first thing you think of is, I'm going to start a property management company.
Right.
That's a big jump. What was going through your mind there?
Leaving my old man owned a small business. He owns an auto shop out in Greenfield. And as I was looking for kind of I called it career 2.0, I was retiring from the military, but I didn't let my wife and kids say that, right? It's dad gets a new job. I had built myself up to be in defense. I had that technical undergrad, the experience I had. I got a degree in project management from George Washington when I was out in D.C. And I did love that work, but the thought of grinding another 20 years of travel, I'd kind of already missed out on a lot. So I wanted my own business, so I kind of control my schedule, stay closer to home. And as I looked through those, there was a lot of businesses I looked at that either I was priced out of them or they were struggling, and if I could get in there, maybe under owner financing, there was too much risk. So I looked at smaller, lower entry points, and out of all of those, property management at first came across as an option to look at. I thought, no way.
Is that just the concept of the toilets and the maintenance and the?
Not at that, just more.
Because you didn't. I mean, at this point, did you have like investment property, or did you have anything that exposed you to property management at that point?
Yeah, well, we had been tenants, for 15, 16 years after I got married out of college, and so that was exposure. We'd owned a property that kind of through the family we ended up owning, and it was south of Albuquerque, so tough to manage, tough to find a PM company out there. We ended up self-managing it. It didn't go went well enough.
So you were a tenant for 15 years. Did
Yeah,
you have like
yeah.
any like was there any like landlord experiences there where
Like,
you're like, working with the property manager or the owner, and it did like leave any sort of impression on you? Like
not
this
mu-
said, like when you're in that moment thinking, what am I going to do with my life now? You're like, I want to do property management. Just a big jump.
It was just the perception in general. So when I got presented, hey, what do you think about this property management opportunity? There's this company out there, Key Renter, and I was like, no thanks, we passed. We're looking at other things, and as I talking with my wife about it, we thought about just the service we didn't get as owners and as tenants, and thought, man,
Right.
we can crush it in this. We can crush it. Like it's, you know, communication was not there.
Well, I think a lot of people have that same experience
Yeah.
that you're describing. I think that you just decided, hey, I'm gonna go the property management direction and solve it. That's probably the outlier. So you went in the direction of Key Runner.
Hmm.
What made you decide like the franchise route versus just starting your own thing? Is
Yeah.
it like like that military background where it's part of a team, there's resources? Like what was that?
I recognize that there's no one person gets the job done, right? You might you see in a movie or in some people's mind, like a situation comes up and one guy handles it because he's a hero and he can tackle anything. But any challenge and problems, there's a ton of planning and rehearsal and training that goes into it every time, and it comes from a team to make things happen and make them happen well. And so I recognize that if I went out there alone and tried to do this, the likelihood of me sticking with it and succeeding was low. And so that was invaluable. Knowing I had not only the headquarters team, which is excellent for onboarding and kind of helping you get set up, and referring you to some training, and some resources. But then even as I've been through, I'm coming up on 2 years in the business. I kind of had a slow start, so 18 months since I took my first door.
So let's dig into just the growth of your. You started at 0 doors like a lot of people. You had the franchise support, but I mean, going from in my experience, going from 0 to 10 doors, that's tough. That's probably tougher than the 10 to 50, and then the bigger you get, the easier it is to grow because you have like resources around you and it scales a lot better. But going from 0 to 10, I mean, you're building a lot of new habits. You're running a business. You're thinking about you know things like payroll and insurance. And so talk me through just like what that was like going from 0 to 10 doors, like getting the business off the ground.
The documentation to get started up did seem like it took a long time, right? For this checklist, get my realtor license, like that was. But even once that was settled, those like I said, the phone wasn't ringing, so it's just kind of terrifying. It's like, hey, I'm the breadwinner here. I got to do something, and this business is not going anywhere. And even then, but one thing, what I came to realize was you really just got to be ready to take like the next 2 steps. Because if you're thinking through the whole problem, it's just way too much to handle. So it's like, hey, what's that sales call going to look like? Let me run through how I'm going to manage this place for a year. Write down questions. How do I handle A, B, and C? How do I handle emergency maintenance? How they get a hold of me, right? You're just thinking through
like
that.
documenting your processes,
exactly
but
right.
like also focusing on what matters, right?
That's
'Cause,
right.
if you sit there and document your processes all day, you talked about it, you didn't do it. And especially when you're starting out, a lot of it's taking that action. But when I think about property management, I kind of break it down into growth. You've got operations, and then maybe a third bucket that's like admin, other HR, everything else. How did you balance going back and forth between needing to grow and adding doors so you have revenue in the door, but also like making sure your foundational processes were sound?
Not well.
Not well.
It didn't feel like that, right? Because
Like you probably weren't thinking about it in that way
No,
at the
it
time.
was-
It's like fight or flight. You're like,
yeah, it was more the I'd feel overwhelmed. Like, hey, I mean, I got these work orders are coming in. I don't know how did that get paid. All these loose ends, and then as soon as you feel like okay, time up, more doors are coming in. So it's ebbed and flowed. Almost I seems like I got exactly what I can handle at the time because you're growing along with it.
yeah. So speaking of growth, let's talk about how are you growing the business right now? How many doors are you at? You started a couple years ago, or
We're coming up on 70 real quick. Yeah,
yeah, and you manage a nicer asset in Indianapolis, like
That's right.
relative to a lot of other property managers. You're probably average 1,800 rent, something like that.
It's like 22.
22. Yeah. So
That's coming down. There's a few. I took on a few high dollar properties in the beginning, so as that number goes up, I think my average will be right around 2 over time.
yeah. So where are you? Your next doors, like where are those coming from?
They're
what-
coming from our website.
From your website.
Yeah.
So like organic online traffic.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it. A few realtor referrals, but mostly right now I was paying. I was using Thumbtack for a while. I just ended that.
What'd that cost? I
I
haven't
j-
really used Thumbtack a lot. I've heard people mention it a lot.
The first time I saw you was on Thumbtack. When I was young and using it, and Live Indie popped up as a competitor. I'm like, who are these guys? And I remember seeing.
Yeah,
your-
we like made an account.
See,
but,
yeah,
nothing really happened.
Wait.
So I was just like, what is this?
And
so
so
then
I-
people like that are using it successfully, I'm like, the hell's going on with this?
Well,
stuff?
but seeing that picture, then a few months later, I got an email from you about PMA and the website and the marketing. I'm like, I know that guy. I want to meet him. That was kind of one of the reasons I
those were the
responded so
really
quickly.
the really gritty days. I was just
Yeah, it was.
cold emails, man. It's a lot of no's. A
But-
lot of no's.
But Thumbtack, I did the math not too long ago for another key renter franchise who was asking about how it worked out. I think my cost per door was between 200 and 300. I want to say like 250 something. One of those clients, one of those owners, came in at with 8 doors, and that was early on. I think I had about 8 doors when he signed with me, which was a blessing. I was very fortunate to have him. But yeah, without him, that price would have been significant, like 450 or something.
So you're getting most of it online. You're still using Thumbtack, some of those other, and then referrals, right? So you're networking with agents. Is that
Yeah.
like, are you doing any like pay to play type lead? Like APM or like any of that? Google Ads, like
No,
anything else?
No. I have there's a third party website out there that I pay to be a featured person. So if you took Property Management Indianapolis, we're on their page, and they're usually on the front page of Google. So yeah, no, that's it though, and it's very low cost. And right now it's like I said, I took on 3, maybe 4 doors in October. Between in the last 4 weeks, I'd say, and that's all organic from the website. So, and I think our strategy on that, when Britt and I talked, we made sure we were covering. There's some nice suburbs up there that I want to manage that I don't think a lot of people are targeting. So when we add, Whitestown's a lovely town there on the
Like Fortville,
northwest,
some of
Fortville and
the-
McCordsville. A lot of people don't even know they're on the map. I'm from Hancock County, so I'm very familiar with that area, and with Mount Vernon, which is a wonderful school out there. So I think that I just, one of those doors, one of those PMAs that's out for signature right now is a McCordsville home. So yeah, those are great places to pick up properties, and I think, with being a young startup and not getting to the front page of Google, making sure that you're targeting those areas where other people might not. I can't compete in Indianapolis for the front page, but
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a lot more discipline at this point, which might tie back to your your military background, where it's like you're not just taking on any door.
yeah,
I think a lot of property managers do that. I did that with growing Live Indie. It was like anybody that wanted to sign. I mean, we tried to say we were looking for a certain type of asset, but reality was at the beginning I was just signing everybody that wanted to work with us. But you're signing just the nicer, more AB, like suburban assets. A lot of probably like one-off owners.
I think
That maybe moved to Chicago and they
Yeah.
want to keep the property, that kind of thing.
that's the majority of my portfolio that I manage for people is owners with 1, maybe 2 homes, but mostly 1 home, and they had to move for whatever reason. To your point about the discipline and I think the standards, that comes from the team. That's part of the franchise team. Like, I talk to a lot of people, and I think Dana down in Chattanooga, Chattanooga, one of her stories was she took on like 26 units when she first started out, and she was really proud of, hey, I'm going to show up on that monthly report that I'm growing fast and I got this, and then it became all consuming, and she dumped them within the first year, right? So learning from their mistakes and then asking, hey, what was the problem there? And it might have been the way the owner wanted the properties managed didn't match our or her standards, right? Those are good things. So you're also screening owners as much as you are screening the tenants in the home. You got to make sure that they have the same standards and desires that you do as far as taking care of the property, same vision for the property. They're realistic about it, right? There's a lot of bumps and bruises that come along the way people like to talk about 20 years and I've grown this portfolio and it puts out cash. They don't talk about those nights they stayed awake because they had an eviction or a freaking, pipe rupture and
Yeah,
whatnot. So you got to prep your owners for that.
Yeah, and you're laying a strong foundation, and people don't think about that on the growth side as much, right? They think about, um, their operations.
Yeah.
They're thinking about like their
Yeah.
processes and their systems and their team structure. Um, so on the operations side, I think a controversial topic is like leasing, right? So you think about leasing, there's really three buckets you can fall into. You can fall into you do it yourself. You've got a leasing manager, even a coordinator. It's like everything's in-house. I think that's the more traditional old school way to do it. You also have the hybrid like self-showing model where you're doing it in-house, but you're using tech, to facilitate like self-showings. It became really popular around like COVID, which is about the time you started. And then there's companies like, I think, company like Sunroom Leasing that, completely allows you to outsource your leasing. So what bucket do you fall into there?
The only leasing support we have in that regard is we use Show Mojo right now, which is just more when an applicant inquires or a guest inquires about a property, it kind of automated messages to them, helps with the scheduling. So no, but we're doing in-person showings. Either it's myself or a couple realtors that I know that I can pay to cover for me if I can't make it. I've thought about the remote lock boxes. We haven't implemented them yet. There might be a time when we do, but it's just my personal comfort level.
Yeah, talk to me about that, because I feel like it's you've kind of more methodically grown your business, which I respect. But I mean, on the like leasing side, it is a lot easier when it's either like somebody's doing it for you. You're giving up control, but it's being completely passively done for you, or the self showings, which is like kind of a different beast, and you're on the like more traditional side. Is it a comfort level thing for you?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, I mean, I understand. I've been involved in a lot of conversations about the risks that come. Well, there's all the doomsday. Well, somebody could steal this, do that, and I mean, that's what you have insurance for, and you put processes in place to screen somebody before they go in a home. But
yeah, do you think you'll ever like as you get bigger? Because I know you've got aspirations to have hundreds of doors. That's probably like a full-time person at that point, right? So then you got your own like leasing department.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess we haven't really even talked about your team structure, but yeah, what's that look like?
Is the key renter the key renter team? I feel like the headquarters is like having a board of directors, right? So I got a lot of people I can lead on that are watching out for me. So there's a team there, right? And I have my local managing broker, Bob Morris, is a great mentor and friend that I can call to if I have trouble. I hired APM Help. APM Help is a company
Like with
that does
accounting,
the
yeah.
bookkeeping. So
Yeah, I've heard of this guy.
because I just didn't. I looked at I couldn't afford it at the time, right? But I knew I needed to. You look at things in like risks. How do I reduce the risk? That one, I screw up this trust accounting stuff and eat crow if I've used money improperly or overpaid or underpaid, all the things that could happen. To lose credibility with an owner. Also, as I grow, how do I mitigate against fraud? I've heard about
Right.
companies where, the accountant and the maintenance coordinator were, it just I had to protect myself and protect my clients and protect the money. So they handle the trust accounting side. It's really easy. Invoice comes in, I just email it over. We use Asana as a project management tool to kind of communicate with them, and then they work out a portfolio on my behalf and make sure everything's done all the way up from, like I said, mailing an invoice or me telling them to do something all the way to doing the monthly payments. So, and daily, they kind of triple tie out the accounts to make sure.
It sounds like you lean on like software, third-party partners, the key earner network. Do you have any like VAs on your team?
I do. Yeah, that was what I was about to mention. Two VAs. One's kind of I'm she's kind of hired with the title I had at the time was assistant property manager, but she's really the operations manager because she's doing everything. And then we just hired a maintenance coordinator who's just focused on keeping track of where maintenance repairs are in space and time.
Is that person like U.S.? Is the maintenance coordinator U.S. based
No,
or?
both of them are in Mexico.
Yep.
Yep.
So on your maintenance, so like let's say a maintenance request comes through, what happens? You've got, because when you think about property management, right? We've talked about leasing, we've talked about like the sales growth side of the business. Maintenance and leasing is probably 60 to 80% of what you're doing.
It
right?
really is.
I mean, at the end, especially at 70 doors, when you don't have, a lot of team resources, it's like all you're doing.
Yeah.
So, I know you want to get bigger, right? So it's that balance of like delegating, reading between the lines, you're doing the you're doing the leasing in house because probably the standard like quality level, like you want it to kind of live up to your, your standard experience. But on the maintenance side, like, do you go out and like fix things yourself?
No, no, I got yelled at for that by my coaches.
Yeah.
Because I can, right? I mean,
But you were there for a while.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you think, well, and it'd be easier than calling somebody if I was there, and I probably had time to do it, and that's all right. But I think it's just you can't duplicate yourself for that. It's not scalable. So real quick, that was off the table.
But the VA now is like your maintenance VA. What's his name?
Her name's Karen.
Karen. So
Yeah.
Karen's a maintenance request comes through.
Yeah,
She's in another country probably, I would imagine.
yeah.
It comes through and she's delegating it to your vendors that are like in your Appfolio system, I assume.
That's right. And a few key things there. We use Property Meld as a software.
What have been your thoughts on Property Meld so far?
The things I really like about it are when a tenant puts in a meld, they can select times that work for them. And then when I assign it to a vendor, that vendor can pick a time that matches his schedule.
Which is perfect for the VA
It's
structure,
amazing.
right? 'Cause
Right.
The VA like puts it in the system and then
Yeah,
the
and
tenant and the vendor can kind of like facilitate a little bit.
Yeah, that's the one. So that's the huge plus. The other one is if a time doesn't work out or anything else is going on, vendors and tenants can text each other through the software, and we have that visibility. And we can chime in and talk to the tenant alone. We can talk to the vendor alone. We can pull everybody onto one thread. And so you're not calling saying, "Hey, did you get that done? How's this going?" Right? You see the communication progress. You see the completed meld. Some pictures show up. The invoice shows up. It's just beginning to end. It's all there. And I work with Scott, and I believe you know him well as well. He has a large team, so he's able to be kind of a one-stop shop for 90% of our work orders that come in.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that positions you well to scale up.
It does. Yeah, building a relationship with him and finding him was, or I guess they found me as his assistant Stephanie was reaching out. Has been invaluable.
And do you mark up maintenance? Is that a revenue driver?
We do a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, I got a maintenance coordinator. I got the software, so there is a markup, small markup. Yeah.
Yep. And then so for the VA, what's that cost right now? I assume you might need somebody else in the future, but like, what's that cost now?
I'll pay her $11.50 a month, and then I've tied my her pay is also scaled with door growth as well. So there's an incentive for taking on doors that kind of to help them out.
Yeah,
or to pay more, so they're excited about growth as well, right? You want everybody on board with your goals.
How does the VA know who to assign it to?
We're learning that, so that's a learning. Honestly, Scott is most things, other than HVAC, and she knows who we can do with that. And then if anything falls out of that, she could just simply, shoot me a text, and I answer and we get it assigned. Pest control is the other thing that they're not doing. So
yeah, I think AI is an area where you could leverage. Kind of assisting the VA, combining, taking AI and its ability, kind of powering the VA to help like make some of that happen for you could be a way to, make that process a little smoother as you scale up. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts? Like, I think AI is a big buzzword in property management right now. Like, what are your general thoughts on like how it plays into a property management business?
It's helped a lot with. I think I used to be like, man, I don't feel like writing a property description. Right, but it helps. I think the way our tool that comes with your guys' website, we put in the address. Not only does it write up a description, but then it has our standard verbiage at the bottom every time, because it's learned to do that. So that helps a lot. Like I mentioned earlier, I've kind of explored what it can do for writing Facebook posts. Right, like, hey, give me a post about winterizing your home. Write me a post about investing in property management or properties in Hamilton County. And it just spits those out. So I think and take it or leave it. You can cut 70% of that in and put it into a post, or or all of it straightforward. But I'm really impressed with the speed it works and how accurate.
I think the other side of the coin is people like think like Terminator. It's like what everybody jumps to. I've heard that like so many times. Like Terminator. Like what? Like does that ever come to your mind when you like think about AI? Like what's your I've talked to people that are like, I don't want to even touch it. I don't even want to like think about it. But like the way I think about it is like it's potentially more powerful in terms of technology, like more powerful than like the internet coming out. So that'd be like somebody in like 2000, 1999 saying like, doomsday's coming. I'm like not going to use the internet. Internet's bad,
Right.
right?
Yeah, no, I have no fear for what we're doing.
It's kind of on the other extreme, right? It's just like trying to make a property manager's life easier.
yeah. I mean, yeah, if it can, I think what I've learned in property in this business and in property management in general is like there are a lot of 10 and 20-minute tasks. That's what's getting you every day. There's no, everything's broken down into that, and that's probably true of anything, but there's that's what it. So if I can take the 20-minute tasks and make them 5-minute tasks, and the 10-minute tasks and make them 2-minute tasks, and automate the 2-minute tasks, the more you can do, take your processes, and because there's about a dozen and a half things that you're doing. You're on board a property. You're moving a tenant out. You're on board. If you can automate or streamline your routine things, then when those outliers come along, right, you have the capacity to respond to them, and you're not always behind. Right, you can get ahead.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to like just your operations, right? It's the same reason you hire the VA to facilitate the maintenance with your vendor network. Right now, your vendor network's smaller because it can be, but you do that because it's more efficient, so you can scale the business. And I think like AI is going to supplement any property manager to be able to do their job better, to be able to like equip their team to do their job better at a lower cost.
Right.
It's like the efficiency is, I think, where that really comes through. And my take on it is really centered around, thinking about like marketing agencies. Like everyone's used marketing agencies for, websites, especially like blog content, SEO, right? But SEO is really expensive. Getting on the first page of Google costs a lot of money. With the effects of AI right now, there's companies out there that are leveraging it and getting on the first page of Google a lot more accessible for a lot lower cost. And so I think like big picture, the companies that are like using AI are going to be the ones that succeed long term. And it's not just because of AI, it's more that mindset of like continual growth, like being more efficient, optimizing the business model. Yeah. It's just an easy way to do that. Yeah, so well, I'm off my AI soapbox.
And I have two follow-ups. So back to I seem like I went onto the sidewalk there about the operations, but all of that's just a repeatable process. Like whether the AI can do it for you or tee up everything, so you're like, yeah, that's right, click. Hey, get Bob Smith. I just have a phone call. The owner agrees they want a PMA. Start the owner onboarding process for Bob Smith, and it knows in Lead Simple. There's my CRM. There's Bob. There's his address. Like it could tee up all that, and then the next phase, and then the next phase, and then build it in AppFolio and write things. Like there's a potential to where I would definitely have somebody making sure things go right. But
when it like keeps you from having that like that burnout, right? Because you think about property management, it's so negative. Like every communication you get for the most part, tenants upset. There's water coming from the ceiling, into the kitchen. There's upset owners because they don't understand their, profit and loss statement for that month, or whatever it might be. And so even like, I don't know if you're guilty of this, but I am. You've got your email inbox sitting there. I keep all my emails unread if I haven't like addressed it yet. And sometimes there's that like tough email I have to send that I just keep putting off. Yeah. I know you've told me this before. You kind of do this too. And it's like, take the emotion out of it, because I think that's what we're like anxious about, is that like typing up that negative email, it's going to probably result in another task you got to do after, a follow-up, a call, whatever. Yeah. So just let the AI write the email for you. Give it a quick check, hit send, move on.
Yeah, I think that's Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality, right? Like you're having this argument in your head, or this conflict in your head that's going to come from that email or from that conversation. And man, 99 out of 100 times my owners are like, man, thanks for handling that for me, Mike. I'm real happy. Like that's
Can I transition a little bit? Like, what's your big picture like goal for yourself? Like, why are you running a property management business? Like, is it something for you that you're going to do forever, pass on to your kids? Is it, do you have an exit plan? Like, what are you working towards?
I don't have, not pass on to the kids. I want them to, whatever they want.
You want them to have a better life than property management?
No, I think being a small business owner is a great life, whatever that may be, right? And if they choose it, that's fine. But I don't try to shape their futures.
Where do you want to go? Like, what's your end goal, right? It's like, because you think about the industry right now. There's a lot of roll up happening, a lot of consolidation. Yeah, the big dogs are coming in and buying up the local property manager that's been around for a while. Some people are building property management companies just to sell them.
Right.
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's a
Right.
great business to be able to
If
to
the
build
market
wealth.
works for
Yeah,
it,
if the
yeah.
market's working. But for you, like, are you working towards an exit plan?
Not the exit plan's not on my horizon at all. I think what is on my horizon.
Because you're the next two steps. So what are the next two steps
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah,
business?
yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah. When I was leaving the military and thinking about what I wanted to do, and doing a lot of reflection with some organizations that help you prepare for that, the Honor Foundation and some other coaches I'd work with. As we drilled down to what really motivates you, I'd done a lot of cool guy stuff, like, boats, jumping out of helicopters, led some amazing people on, watched them do some amazing things. But I realized it was taking care of people was kind of what was the most fulfilling times as I looked back on what I felt were the success stories. It was taking care of people, and in property management, you're doing that on a smaller scale with owners and with tenants. But I'm really looking forward to having a team that I can take care of, right? Create a good culture in the workplace, and then also offer just a high quality product. That's the end goal right now. That's the next step, is to build that team. I think I also have some
Philanthropic?
philanthropic.
Philanthropic
I grew up out in
motivations?
Hancock County. That's where
Yeah.
so I'd like to have build the business to where I see the model as what I call executive ownership, where it's not my day to day. I'm very much involved, right? But where I could work on some other things I want to do with my life, let alone kind of spend time with the kids and do things that everybody should be doing. But
Yeah, I mean, property management, it's a business that scales.
that's right.
And to have the control and freedom, I mean, you
was-
almost have to be at least 100 doors. I feel like
Oh,
the,
yeah.
the stages are like 100 doors gets you like a scaled up business model, right? You can have kind of every aspect of the business covered. You can afford different softwares or third party services that are top notch. But really, you have to decide, like, are you going to be pushing towards like that next scaled up level, which would probably be 300 doors, 400 doors, depending on your market. We're in the same market, so I generally know it's
Yeah.
like 250, 300 doors. How are you going to go from the 70, because really when I think about you too, you're 70 doors, but it's almost like 120 doors because of your average rent in the market. So like, how are you going to push to that like next level?
Right now, I got my on the horizon of about, I feel like, between 120 doors or so, when hire somebody to be kind of a jack of all trades, like field tech, preferably with a license, but somebody who could be my eyes and ears out there, so I could really then focus on growth, dive more into business development and bringing on new owners and streamlining the processes, and then kind of build it from there based on needs. I think if I said I'm going to hire A, B, C, D, I'm setting myself up for failure. I have an org chart that I think needs to be flushed out at 300 doors, but really it's going to be based on the people I find and the talent I find, and where that person fits in and where the greatest need is next.
Yeah, and that decision is like local versus like outsourced.
Right.
And it sounds like you're leaning towards the local kind of like right-hand person.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the most challenging, or the one you want to get right, I should say.
What do you think your biggest weakness in your business right now is? I feel like people don't talk about,
that's a good
podcasts.
yeah.
They're not like
We
talking
need to
about,
talk about
yeah,
that,
like
right?
what are you struggling with?
It's just it's the organization aspect of it. We've switched. I'd say we're still in the nascent stages of getting our processes down.
Did you just say nascent?
Yeah,
Nascent?
that's
Couldn't do philanthropic, but you can say,
well.
that's a
Yeah.
big word. I don't know.
Too many syllables in philanthropy.
I'm sorry, I cut you off though. I was just like impressed.
Thanks. I have read a couple books since high school.
Sorry, I cut you off.
Biggest weakness. No, good question. And we should talk about that. It's staying organized. Like there is, like you said, there's stuff coming at you every day. And back to your comments about things in property management being kind of negative toned, right? And I feel like
Kind of negative.
kind of
Understatement.
that's
Yeah,
true.
it's
They're not
fucking
calling you.
negative.
They're not calling you to check in and see if you watched the game last night, right? But that's because I think when you're on the defensive, that's how it feels, right? When you're on the defensive, everything that comes at you is an attack, right?
Always.
And back to our processes, back to where AI can help. If you're on the offensive, if you're over communicating at the right time with the right information, now you've brought all that down to a simmer, right? So again, that's like kind of more offensive property management, probably the wrong word, but just being proactive.
Yeah, it seems like
in the
some
comms.
legal hurdles there.
Because
with that.
yeah, I think poor communications are, Mark Dolfini I'm in a mastermind with him. He's a coach up in Lafayette, and we were talking about kind of your core values, what you want. And I said, well, quality, care, communication. Those are the kind of the words I want to embody. And he's like, tell me how you're going to communicate. You're going to just grit your teeth and communicate more. I want to communicate. No, he said something that rings with me all the time is poor communication is a symptom of bad processes or lack of proper infrastructure. Right. And so I think that I was using Asana for a while, then Lead Simple, had some processes we were trying to work out, and now what we're standing up, and I feel is going to be the one that sticks is Appfolio has workflows in there. And one mistake I made was I was looking for some software to make it happen when the first thing I should have done is just grabbed a spreadsheet and wrote down the processes and print them out and used them as such, and then automated them at a later date.
Yeah, because I think there's a way you can over organize.
Oh man,
you can you can completely over organize.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do it, to be honest. And then I'm hearing you say things like Asana, Lead Simple, Appfolio workflows.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the coaching. Like, I feel like that's a lot. It's more about like the action and implementation in a lot of ways. And I think you're combined with your like one step, the next two steps, right? I think that's a cool way to think about processes. It's more about like the book, a lot of people have read like The One Thing. It talks about, thinking about those things that are you wake up and you say, all right, what's the one thing I can do today that's going to like move me towards my goal? I think you can apply that to processes too. Like, what's the one process that's really giving you trouble? Just solve it. You can do it
that's true.
And it's like you're in your head a lot too. You think it's going to take like a week to solve it. Sometimes it takes like 10 minutes.
You can always iterate on it.
Well, like, let's use an example. Like your proactive communication with owners. Right, if like you're getting always bogged down with negative emails,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I've got problems, and that's like something that just keeps coming at you. Like the solution might be just a monthly email update, or bi-monthly, whatever it might be. I mean, you can create that and like probably automate it in like an hour.
Yeah,
especially if you have like vendors, people you work with that can help do some of the tech and marketing side of that. And like, boom, you're done. You just fixed it. Move on to the next one. So,
Well, right now we're inserting communication touch points in the, especially the first time we're leasing somebody's property or putting somebody's property on the market. Hey, it's on the market. Here's the link. Check it out. Give us any feedback. Right? Those types of things, because those questions are coming. Is it on the market yet? We do send out weekly. This is the interest in the property, the showings, things like that. But just fill in those gaps to get ahead of those questions, so they feel like you're. In the absence of information, sometimes people can assume the worst.
That's
right?
Good.
That's personally, you need to I think a good way to live is in when in doubt, don't assume the worst, right? Assume the best.
Yeah,
it's a good thing. Obviously we got to protect ourselves.
Yeah,
and I'm telling you, don't assume the best.
Well, I love being a
trained to assume
property
the worst.
manager, but I can confirm owners almost always assume the worst.
I did. Right, and so I can't blame them. So getting out of those little pieces of information so they know you're on it.
Let's think about a real problem right now. So like leasing. Leasing's a real problem right now because if you look at the market and the landscape, I saw a report recently. I'll try to cite it, and so I'm not just making numbers up, but I think it was something like rents are down like 28% or something like that.
I believe it.
And some of that's seasonal. But I feel like there's something brewing right now, like as far as rental rates, because they surged through COVID. They went up 20, 30, 40%. And that's coming down right now. So I feel like days on market are way up. And so how do you have those conversations with owners? Important, right? It's like if rent's down 30%, I bet some markets it's more, some markets it's less. Like you've got to like adapt your business to that proactively. And then the communication, you can't just like change your process and not communicate to owners.
Well, yeah, and then our duty is to represent our owners. So vacancy is punishing. A $2,100 a month property, you're losing $70 a day by not having the revenue coming in from a tenant. So
and I've tried to like break down the way the way an owner, a client values a property manager. Like what's that like mix, like their mentality. And I've like broken it down to you've got like one half is ROI, right? So ROI is going to be like driving cash flow, mitigating vacancy. But then surprisingly, when I really dug into it, the other half, which like the way I think, I'd be more so the ROI to me is like 80-90%. And then the soft stuff's the rest. But the other half is like the peace of mind. And so when you think about peace of mind, you've got an asset, a property that somebody's managing. You want to have peace of mind, low anxiety that they're just generally taking care of things.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're generally taking care of things, it probably requires good communication, proactive communication. Like that's what really drives that peace of mind.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, when you mentioned like quarterly, monthly newsletters, then are you communicating at the right time when something's happening? So they're not looking at the monthly statement and being like, oh, they spent $210. What was that for?
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah.
That's not. The
It's like a
business-
virus,
Not the
right?
business I want to be in.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like when you don't communicate one thing, they assume you're not communicating. You're
That's
like
right.
hiding others.
It's a challenge.
Yeah. So how do you deal with the owners that expect? We're talking about proactive communication, but we've got like holidays coming up. Like, how do you deal with that?
What like holiday messaging?
Well, yeah, just like communication. Like, well, it's. I think what was it last year, the year before? We had like freezing temperatures in Indianapolis.
Yeah. We just sent out our winterization letter to the tenants, like, hey, reminding them of the disconnecting hoses, shutting things off. Last year, I sent a copy of that to the owners. Hey, this is what your tenants received, and then we go around and personally take care of any vacant properties we have.
So then you put the work in up front, and then you can just kind of ignore
Yeah, I try to.
let the system handle it from there.
I've had one pipe rupture is out in the garage on Christmas Eve, of course. Yeah,
How do you handle that? I bet you drove out there.
I did.
You 100% did.
I did. It was one of my 3 houses at the time. Christmas Eve.
Christmas
I did drive.
Eve.
Why'd you call me out like that?
It's unfiltered. We gotta get right to it.
It is unfiltered. I did. Mike Simmons with Christmas Eve, property management, first year, getting water in the face in a garage. I freaking I thought to walk through the story. So I get the call. I'm trying to talk them through. One, I'm like, well, I didn't document where the water shutoff valve was. Water main shutoff, right? Old house, first one of the 3 I took on. She can't find it. I get there. This is south side of town, too, 45 minutes later. I get there. I find a couple valves that I think these have got to be the water shutoff valves. They're like on the floor behind the washer. And this is an old house that's been added onto a couple times. Both of them were frozen. I thought, man, the last thing I want to do is move this flooding event from the garage to the laundry room.
Yeah.
Right? So I can't get them to close. My assumption being that they're froze open. So the water company comes and shuts it off at the main. Backing up a little bit, like when I'm up in the garage trying to do something, like it's up there, it's getting on the ceiling, then just spreading everywhere. So that drywall's already sunk. So I punched a hole in the drywall and got like a shop vac.
You punched a hole in the drywall?
I did. Got a shop vac hose up through there to direct, because it was a copper line that was just exposed running across the garage to a hose bib, and then put a shop vac hose to direct it straight down onto the floor to stop it from pouring into the insulation and whatnot.
You could call that your property management baptism.
It really was.
I think everyone's experienced that
It's-
at least
yeah.
that one time.
Yeah.
Mine was when I was like just getting started. Similar situation, but I honestly didn't even really get the whole shutoff valve concept. I think I like kind of loosely knew that, you literally turn off the water and the water can't come out anymore. So the tenant calls at like 1 a.m. and naturally I was the emergency maintenance number, my cell phone. That terrible process there. But I think her call, she said like, water is flowing from the bathroom upstairs into the kitchen and running like a river into the basement. And I'm like, whoa, okay. I know I'm like sleepy. I don't even really have good advice to give.
Yeah.
But I just get in the car. I was like, it was in Fountain Square. So I was, 15, 20 minutes away. But I get there and I'm like groggy. And I just like seeing this water flood in. And I think we pulled up a YouTube video really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, the shutoff valve was right there.
Learn how to shut off.
Shut it off.
valve.
And I think that next week was when we built our process around like some sort of communication to tenants about like, but then that never happened again like that. So it mainly just made me feel better because I went through the trauma of because then there's the owner, right? So we took video and whatnot for their insurance.
So now I have like some plastic tags and a Sharpie, and you put water on off and wrap that around.
See,
the
that's
valve.
just, that's just
and then
simple. I love that.
and then do it on the hose bib. Usually, if there's an external hose bib valve that that's visible, there usually is. Some of these hose bibs are designed to not freeze.
I think the
But I'll
process.
label that as well.
Well, you do that, and then you when you do your move-ins,
That's exactly
you
right.
could just
That's
you
where it is.
make them like you talk through that example,
We walk through the HVAC filter.
and then throw it in the lease.
A lot
And
of
be
people-
like, it's your responsibility now,
Yeah,
whether that holds up or not.
you still want
Scare the tenant a little bit because you're representing the owner's interests, right?
I'd say you don't have to scare them. You can empower them.
Empower them.
I forget that I was a 20-year-old clueless 20-year-old at
Yeah.
one point, because you get these a kid who's maybe lived in college, lived in an apartment, moved into a house. They don't know that what an HVAC filter is.
Yeah. But they're like almost like
And they're-
clueless know-it-alls, though. the right out of college crowd is like the clueless know-it-alls when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, but I think when you walk them down and say, hey, this is an HVAC filter, this is the advantage, it's going to take out dust, your system's going to run better, it's going to save you money, we're going to mail you one every 3 months. This is how
Yep.
you change it.
Yep.
If you don't change it and we find it all clogged up and we have a problem, you could be charged for that. Show them where the water softener is. A lot of people have never had one in their house. They don't know the value of that. So
Right.
if a house has a water softener, explaining.
Well, you've got these fancy suburban houses.
That's right.
You've got all
That's
these
right.
water
Yeah,
softeners.
yeah. Like we only buy the Gucci salt. No, explaining that use, and then you're in the same space usually, so you show them where the water on off is. So
Smart.
yeah,
What else you want to talk
reducing
about?
risk.
What else you want to talk about? Be anything. It's my job to
I wanna-
tee that up, but I'm curious. What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about. I found this to be true. There's found great camaraderie and friendships in small business owners.
Why do you think that you've had that connection?
It's a grind, and when you're in that, you recognize that, and there's a respect for that, and there's not too many people you can kind of vent to about the frustrations you have, from trying to manage the whole thing, and so that has been, some of my best friends are either in this space or own a roofing company, a concrete company, things like that.
Yeah, when we do a sales call with local service providers, like a plumber, HVAC company owner, I'd say it's probably 75% of the time they're doing the screen share in their truck or their van. I'm not kidding. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, even more so than property management. That's why I think,
Mhm.
when you think about a property management company, they have so much influence over the success of
Right.
those local companies, right? Like you think about that, like local plumber with one truck, maybe just got their second truck. They're trying to build a business too. And if you can give them all of your business on the HVAC or the plumbing side, that's going to help catapult their business forward, which if you're growing, they're growing. It can create this bond where it's like everybody's aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of property management company owners, they think very, like we were talking about being proactive versus reactive earlier. Like, I think property managers can be more proactive by realizing how much value they bring to their vendor network. The reactive way to go about things, which a lot of people do, is it's 97 degrees in the summer and you've got 15 ACs out and your one HVAC company is not doing a very good job because they're super busy.
Right.
The proactive way of going about it would have been in the winter, formalizing a relationship with them as a preferred vendor, giving them exclusive access to your requests, and then establishing and negotiating what that means for you. Because what that means, what I think it should mean is you get priority access every time. So your customers aren't the ones waiting. It's the other people. Right? Because you have that weight. You can use that to create a 1 + 1 = 3 good relationship. But at the end of the day, you're the point guard facilitator of that revenue.
Right.
I don't think very many property managers think of it that way. Do you?
I don't think of it as a power position, but I do think that if you have that trust in that relationship, and you do obviously offer value in size, and maybe I don't because I'm not there yet, right? I'm not offering, I don't got 450 on the doors. But I do find that, I found people I trust. They're authorized to spend up to a certain amount, and I'm not going to question them when they, I get a lot of HVAC jobs done for $300 to $350, replace a capacitor, replace a fan for $500, $700. They're not going in there and saying, "Oh, you need the whole system."
Yep.
They know I'm smart enough to come sniff it out, and we got that trust level. They're just not going to
it's
play
the,
that game.
It's the
with me.
trust level.
Yeah, they're not going to play that game.
Even the tie to the cost or right? Because at the end of the day, we're representing our clients, the owners.
Right.
We're protecting their and protecting and driving their cash flow.
That's right.
And so how do you take that? Like, we agree on that. So like, how do you take that and have a conversation with your vendors to ensure that you're having a partnership with the vendor, but also like the driver to that partnership is to increase cash flow for the owner? Like, how do you balance that?
Well, I haven't had an official like discussion with it or a scheduled one, but I think that the discussions I do have, I mean, they know I'm not trying to make a maintenance revenue machine. They know I want things fixed right the first time. I want to make sure we get it right. I'm open to, hey, if you see something else that needs it, let's call me. Let's get that fixed too while you're there. I don't. So I think there's an element of quality that I communicate that they understand, and I think they respect that because they get to leave the job proud that they've done it right and not put a patch on it that's going to last for another 6 months.
Yeah, it's like vendors that can see the forest through the trees.
Right.
And that's who you're looking for to partner with, right?
And I think, and with the trust that they don't have to call me to get a quote on something that they know they can get this guy's AC back up and running for $350. Like, go for it, and then paying quickly. Some of the vendors that are big, some of these vendors I work with huge companies. I'm like, hey, why do you want to? I only got a couple turns a month maybe, and a lot of service calls. I know your money's in the turn. And I'm like, why? Well, one, I like you, and two, you pay me. You don't do like 45 days to get your money back to me. You're getting it to me every Friday.
It's a lot to dig into.
I underestimated how much maintenance would take of my time.
How much does it take now? Like, would you say?
I mean, there's a
percentage of your day. Like, I mean, even sitting here with us for however long, like, I bet maintenance requests have come through for you.
Probably 2 to 3 hours solid attention, let alone a few phone calls here and there. That's with somebody assisting me on the other side of it. And again, we need to sharpen the sword on the processes.
Yeah, but I think it ties to your leasing
grow
strategy, though. You care about your customer's experience so much, which is good. Like, it's never going to be a negative, but like you care about it so much that you want to oversee it and ensure that your clients are happy. Your team members are happy, that you're like just doing an exceptional job, right? Like, if you have over 4.5 stars on Google, like, focus less on your processes and your systems, because something's working really well. Like, hammer automation and growth if that's where you're at.
And you're absolutely right. And I think that those processes, what they could do is just allow me to increase quality, right? To really, really be on, because it's not scalable. My 2 hours a day I'm doing right now with it, right? Like, I'm going to reach a pain point and need to be more automated, need to be more delegated.
Yeah, I think your
vision.
Yeah, your military background I think it comes through a lot in the way you run your business, like that attention to detail. I think that's really cool. So I asked this question, in all these conversations that I have with property management company owners. What do you think is most important? Is it growth, operations, or something else in terms of the success or future success of your property management company?
I think something I said early on, one of my, as I thought through this, was I never want to outgrow my quality. And so I don't know how that translates to the list you just mentioned. It's not growth. I think
it's operations.
I think that's big. That's a mix of operations and culture, right? Because you can have really good operations, but if you don't have the culture that cares about it, right, are you implementing it correctly? So I think it's culture and operations is what you want to get right, and that's probably true for most every venture. And then I think that wins in the long run, right? I could have grown. I've probably turned down 70 to 80 doors, whether they be in Anderson or Muncie or a smaller portfolio that I knew I didn't have the capacity at the time because it would be maintenance intensive. A 40-unit building downtown that was lower rents. That again, like I thought, I don't have the capacity. I don't have the people to do that. So I think that discipline to put that was not crushing my operations. That would have crushed me. But yeah, operations and culture, I think, are what's essential.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
I didn't even give you a heads up on that.
That's
question,
why. That's why I didn't read the read ahead.
Yeah,
I didn't
there
want
you
to
go.
think through stuff too much.
It's unfiltered. We got to have as little
That's
read
right.
ahead as possible.
Yeah.
But how can people get a hold of you if they have any questions? I know you value the network and working with other property management company owners and best practices and all that. So how can somebody get a hold of you if they wanted to chat?
Email Michael at keyrenter317.com or call the phone 317-360-0456.
Love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Shoot a note on LinkedIn. Friend me on LinkedIn. That's another place. That's about the only social media I really use.
I feel like everybody's LinkedIn photo is from like 20 years ago. Is yours
really-
up to date?
No, and it's. I need to get some headshots done. By the way,
I
I
mean,
think it's a
we've got a
headshot
nice-
I took on my back porch for grad school. Is what. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, get that headshot up there.
Yeah. Right.
All right. This was good.
All right. Thanks, man.